Well, would you look at that? The moon has eclipsed the sun. How about that? I've been thinking about that song, Eclipse. I had a little bit of that playing, or I was thinking about it anyway. It's like, you go online and like, what does it all mean? People think that song means all sorts of stuff. I always thought it was like, the sun and creation and everything's under the sun and it's all in tune. And then the moon comes over and just washes this love over all of it. I kind of like my version because other people's like, oh, it's all dark and dreary. I mean, who decides what the theme is, Like the guy who wrote it or the people who listen to it? I don't know. That's a question. Speaking of theme, chapter 12 today, Natalie Babbitt's Tuck Everlasting. I think if you listen carefully, you might figure out, she's trying to tell us something here. It's a good part. Who decides what it's about? I guess we do. I don't know. See what you think. Maybe about 20 minutes today. I'm not real sure. We'll see. I always rewind a little bit. Let's see. Winnie made it to the house with the Tucks, Miles, Jesse, and Ma Tuck. She met Pa Tuck, who seems to be kind of a mellow dude. They told the whole story about how they drank from the water. Let's see. Who didn't drink? Oh, the cat. The cat didn't drink from the water, but the horse and all the people did. And then they had to test it out. So like Pa, I think, shot himself with a shotgun. The bullets went right through him like it was water. I love that part. So then she ate a meal. And while she was eating a meal with him, she noticed, God, their house is like dirty and they don't seem to care. And they all sit around while they eat. They don't talk at all. And she was kind of missing home. So then now everybody wants to take her out on the pond, I guess. And finally, Pa Tuck said, no, I'll take her out on the pond. So that's where we are now. I think he's going to take her out of the pond. Let's rewind just a little bit. This is part 3. I think we're going to do chapter 12 through 16 of Tuck Everlasting. I don't know his name, said Winnie, but she's talking about the dude in the yellow suit. I don't know his name, said Winnie, but he's a pretty nice man, I guess. In fact, he seems supremely nice to her now, kind of a savior. And then she added, he came to our house last night, but he didn't go inside. Well, that don't sound too serious, Pa, said Miles, just some stranger passing by. Just the same, we got to get you home again, Winnie, said Tuck, standing up decisively. We got to get you home as fast as we can. I got a feeling this whole thing is going to come apart like wet bread. But first, we got to talk. And the pond's the best place. The pond's got the answers. Come along, child. Let's go out on the water. Chapter 12. The sky was a ragged blaze of red and pink and orange, and its double trembled on the surface of the pond like color spilled from a paint box. The sun was dropping fast now, a soft red sliding egg yolk, and already to the east there was a darkening to purple. Winnie, newly brave with her thoughts of being rescued, climbed boldly in the rowboat. The hard heels of her buttoned boots made a hollow banging against its wet boards, loud in the warm and breathless quiet. Across the pond, a bullfrog spoke, a deep note of warning. Tuck climbed in too, pushing off and settling the oars into their locks, dipping them into the silty bottom in one strong pull. The rowboat slipped from the bank, then, silently, and glided out, tall water grasses whispering away from its sides, releasing it. Here and there, the still surface of the water dimpled, and bright rings spread noiselessly and vanished. Feeding time, said Tuck softly, and Winnie, looking down, saw hosts of tiny insects skittering and skating on the surface. Best time of all for fishing, he said, when they come up to feed. He dragged the oars, the rowboat slowed, and began to drift gently toward the farthest end of the pond. It was so quiet that Winnie almost jumped when the bullfrog spoke again. And then, from the tall pines and birches that ringed the pond, a wood thrush caroled. The silver notes were pure and clear and lovely. Know what that is? All around us, Winnie, said Tuck, his voice low. It's life, moving, growing, changing, never the same 2 minutes together. And this water you look at every morning, it looks the same, but it ain't. All night long it's been moving, coming in through the stream, back there to the west, slipping out through the stream down east here, always quiet, always new, moving on. You can't hardly see the current, can you? And sometimes the wind makes it look like it's going the other way. But it's always there. The water's always moving on. And someday, after a long while, it comes to the ocean. They drifted in silence for a time. The bullfrog spoke again, and from behind them, far back in some reedy secret place, another bullfrog answered in the fading light. The trees along the banks were slowly losing their dimensions, flattening into silhouettes clipped from black paper and pasted onto the paling sky. The voice of a different frog, hoarser and not so deep, croaked from the nearest bank. "Know what happens then?" said Tuck. "To the water? The sun sucks some of it right out of the ocean and carries it back in the clouds. And then it rains, and the rain falls into the stream, and the stream keeps a moving on, taking it all back again. It's a wheel, Winnie. Everything's a wheel, turning and turning, never stopping. The frogs is part of it, and the bugs and the fish and the wood thrush too. And people, but never the same ones, always coming in new, always growing and changing and always moving on. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it is." The rowboat had drifted at last to the end of the pond, and now its bow bumped into the rotting branches of a fallen tree that thrust thick fingers into the water. And though the current pulled at it, dragging its stern sideways, the boat was wedged and could not follow. The water slipped past it, out between clumps of reeds and brambles, and gurgled down a narrow bed, over stones and pebbles, foaming a little, moving swiftly now after its slow trip between the pond's wide banks. And farther down, Winnie could see that it hurried into a curve round a leaning willow and disappeared. "It goes on," Tuck repeated, "to the ocean. But this rowboat now, it's stuck. If we didn't move it out ourselves, it'd stay here forever, trying to get loose, but stuck. That's what us Tucks are, Winnie, stuck. So we can't move on. We ain't part of the wheel no more. Dropped off, Winnie, left behind. And everywhere around us, things is moving and growing and changing. Well, you, for instance, a child now, but someday a woman. And after that, moving on to make room for new children." Winnie blinked, and all at once her mind was drowned with the understanding of what he was saying. For yes, even she would go out into the world willy-nilly someday. Just go out, like the flame of a candle, no use in protesting. It was a certainty. She would try very hard not to think of it, but sometimes as now it would be forced upon her. She raged against this, helpless and insulted, and blurted out at last, "I don't want to die." "No," Tuck said calmly, "not now. Your time's not now. But dying's part of the wheel, right there next to being born. You can't pick out the pieces you like and leave the rest. Being part of the whole thing, well, that's the blessing. But it's passing us by, us Tucks. Living's heavy work, but off to one side, the way we are, it's useless too. Don't make sense. If I'd known how to climb back on the wheel, I'd do it in a minute. You can't have living without dying. So you can't call it living what we got. We just are. We just be, like rocks beside the road." Tuck's voice was rough now, and Winnie, amazed, sat rigid. No one had ever talked to her of things like this before. "I want to grow again," he said fiercely, "and change. And if that means I got to move on at the end of it, well, then I want that too. Listen, Winnie, it's something you don't find out how you feel about until afterwards. If people knowed about the spring down there in Tree Gap, oh, they'd all come a-running like pigs to slop. They'd trample each other trying to get some of that water. That'd be bad enough, but after a while, can you imagine? All the little ones, little forever. All the old ones, old forever. Can you picture what that means? Forever? The wheel would keep going round and the water rolling by to the ocean, but the people would have turned into nothing but rocks on the side of the road. 'Cause they wouldn't know till after. Then it'd be too late." He peered at her, and when he saw that his face was pinched with the effort of explaining, "Do you see? Now, child, do you understand? Oh, Lord, I just got to make you understand." There was a long, long moment of silence. Winnie struggled with the anguish of all these things and could only sit hunched and numb. the sound of the water rolling in her ears. It was black and silky now. It lapped at the sides of the rowboat and hurried on around them into the stream. And then, down the length of the pond, a voice rang out. It was Miles, and every word across the water came clearer to their ears. "Pa! Pa, come back! Something's happened, Pa! The horse is gone! Can you hear me? Someone stole the horse!" Chapter 13. Sometime later, the man in the yellow suit slipped down from the saddle and tied the Tuck's old horse to a bar of the Foster's fence. Gee, who stole the horse? He tried the gate. It was unlocked. He pushed through and strode up the path to the door of the cottage. Though it was very late now, almost midnight, the windows glowed golden. The family had not gone to bed. The man in the yellow suit took off his hat and smoothed his hair with his long white fingers, and then he knocked at the door. It was opened at once by Winnie's grandmother, and before she could speak, the man said quickly, "Good evening. May I come in? I have happy news for you. I know where they've taken the little girl." Chapter 14. There'd been nothing for the Tucks to do but go to bed. It was too dark now to go out looking for the horse thief, and anyway, they had no idea what he had done his thieving or which way he had gone. "That beats all, though, don't it, Pa?" said Jessie, coming up to a person's house and stealing their horse right out from under their nose. "I got to give you that," said Tuck, "but the question is, was it just some ordinary thief, or was it someone that had some special reason? I don't like it. I got a bad feeling about the whole thing." "Hush now, Tuck," said May. She was spreading a quilt on the old sofa, making it into a bed for Winnie. "You're too much of a worrier. There's nothing we can do about it now, so there's no sense in fussing. You got no reason to think there's anything peculiar about it anyways. Come on, we'll get a good night's sleep and figure it out in the morning when we're all fresh. Boys, you go and don't get to talking. You'll keep us awake. Winnie, child, now you bed down here too. You'll sleep first rate on the sofa here." But Winnie did not sleep at all, not for a long, long time. The cushions of the sofa were remarkably lumpy and smelled of old newspapers, and the chair pad May had given her for a pillow was thin and hard and rough under her cheek. But far worse than this was the fact that she was still in her clothes, for she had firmly refused the offer of May's spare nightgown with its seeming miles of faded cotton flannel. Only her own nightgown would do, and the regular bedtime routine, without them, she was painfully lonely for home. Her joy of the road that morning had completely disappeared. The wide world shrank, and her oldest fears rode freely in her consciousness. It was unbelievable that she should be in this place. It was an outrage, but she was helpless to do anything about it, helpless to control it, and exhausted by the conversation in the rowboat. Was it true? Could they really never die, these Tucks? It had evidently not occurred to them that she might not believe it. They were only concerned that she kept the secret. Well, she did not believe it. It was nonsense. Wasn't it? Well, wasn't it? Winnie's head whirled. Remembering the man in the yellow suit was the only thing that kept her from weeping. "He's told them by now," she thought, rehearsing it. "They've been looking for me for hours, but they don't know where to look. No, the man saw which way they were headed. Papa will find me. They're out looking for me right now." She went over it again and again, lying wrapped in the quilt, while outside the moon rose, turning the pond to silver. There was a hint of mist now that the air was cooler, and the frogs talked comfortably. Crickets soon joined in with their shrill rhythmic song. In the table drawer, the mouse wrestled softly, enjoying the supper of flapjack crumbs May had put there for him. And at last these things were clearer in Winnie's ears than the voice of her thoughts. She began to relax, listening to the sound-filled silence. Then, just as he was drifting to sleep, she heard the soft footsteps, and May was beside her. "You resting easy, child?" she whispered. "I'm all right, thank you," said Winnie. "I'm sorry about everything," said May. "I just didn't know no other way but to bring you back with us. I know it ain't very happy for you here, but, well, anyway, did you have a good talk with Tuck?" "I guess so," said Winnie. "Well, that's good. Well, I'm going to go back to bed now. Get a good night's sleep." "All right," said Winnie. But still May lingered. We've been alone so long, she said at last. I guess we don't know how to be with visitors. But still and all, it's a good feeling, you being here with us. I wish you was ours. She put out an awkward hand and then touched Winnie's hair. Well, she said, good night. Good night, said Winnie. Tuck came too, a little later, to peer down at her anxiously. He was wearing a long white nightshirt and his hair was rumpled. Oh, he said, you still awake? Everything all right? Yes, said Winnie. I didn't mean to go disturbing you, he said, but I've been laying in there thinking I ought to be setting out here with you till you went to sleep. You don't have to do that, said Winnie, surprised and touched. I'm all right. He looked uncertain. Well, if you want something, will you holler? I'm just in the next room. I'll be out here like a shot. And then he added gruffly, it's been a while, it's been quite a time since we had a natural growing child in the house. His voice trailed off. Well, try to get some sleep. That sofa there, I guess it ain't used to the kind of thing you're used to. Oh, it's fine, said Winnie. Well, the bed's no better, or I'd switch with you, he said. He didn't seem to know how to finish the conversation, but then he bent and he kissed her quickly on the cheek and was gone. Winnie lay with her eyes wide. She felt cared for and confused, and all at once she wondered what would happen to the Tucks when her father came. What would he do to them? She would never be able to explain how they had been with her, how they made her feel. She remembered guiltily that at supper she had decided they were criminals. Well, but they were, and yet... And then a final visitor made her confusion complete. There was a creaking on the loft stairs, and Jessie was looking down at her, very beautiful and eager in the faint blue moonlight. Hey, Winnie Foster, he whispered. You asleep? This time she sat up, pulling the quilt around in sudden embarrassment, and answered, No, not yet. Well, then listen. He knelt beside her, his curls tumbled over his eyes wide. I've been thinking it over. Pa's right about you having to keep the secret. It's not hard to see why. But the thing is, you knowing about the water already and living right next to it so you could go there any time. Well, listen. How'd it be if you was to wait till you're 17, same age as me? Heck, that's only 6 years off. And then you could go and drink some. And then you could go away with me. We could get married even. That'd be pretty good, wouldn't it? And we could have a grand old time and go all around the world and see everything. Listen, Ma and Pa and Miles, they don't know how to enjoy what we got. Why heck, Winnie, life's to enjoy yourself, isn't it? What else is it good for? That's what I say. And you and me, we'd have a good time that never stopped. Wouldn't that be something? Once more, Winnie adored him kneeling there beside her in the moonlight. He wasn't crazy. How could he be? He was just amazing. But she was struck dumb. That means she was silent. She couldn't speak. All she could do was just stare at him. Hey, you think on it, Winnie Foster, Jessie whispered earnestly. Think on it some and see if it don't sound good. Anyway, I'll see you in the morning. All right? All right, she managed to whisper in return. He slipped away then, back up the creaking steps. But Winnie sat upright, wide awake, her cheeks burning. She could not deal with this remarkable suggestion. She could not think on it, for she didn't know what to believe about anything. She lay down again, finally, and stared into the moonlight for another half an hour before she fell asleep. 17 forever. Sounds pretty good, huh? What should she do? Should she drink the water when she's 17 and be with Jessie forever? What would Pa Tuck tell her? No, Winnie, don't do it. You won't be part of the wheel anymore. Chapter 15. In Tree Gap, the same moonlight silvered on the roof of the Touch-Me-Not cottage, but inside the lamps were burning. That's right, said the man in the yellow suit. I know where she is. That's right, I know where she is. He sat back in his chair in the Foster's spotless parlor, crossing his long, thin legs, and the suspended foot began a rhythmic jiggling. He hung his hat on his knee and smiled, his eyes nearly closed. I followed them, you see. She's with them now. As soon as I saw they'd arrived at their destination, I turned around and came directly back. I thought you'd be staying up. You've been looking for her all day, of course. It must be quite a worry. He lifted his hand, and then, ignoring their exclamations, he began to smooth the thin hairs of his beard. You know, he said thoughtfully, I've come a long way, looking for a wood exactly like the one you've got next door here. It would mean a great deal to me to own it. And how pleasant to have neighbors like yourself. Now understand, I wouldn't cut down many of the trees. I'm no barbarian, you can see that. No, just a few. You wouldn't find it different at all, really. He gestured with his long white fingers and smiled, his face crinkling pleasantly. We'd be good friends, I think. Why, the little girl and I, we're friends already. It would be a great relief to see her safely home again, wouldn't it? He clicked his tongue and frowned. Dreadful thing, kidnapping. Isn't it fortunate that I was a witness? Why, without me, you might never have heard a word. Oh, they're rough country people, the ones that took her. There's no telling what the illiterates like that might do. Yes, he sighed, lifting his eyebrows and smiling again. It looks as if I'm the only person in the whole world who knows where to find her. And then the man in the yellow suit sat forward. His long face took a hard expression. Now I don't have to spell things out for people like yourselves. Some types one comes across can't seem to cut their way through any problem that does not make things difficult. But you, I don't have to explain the situation to you. I've got what you want, and you've got what I want. Of course, you might find the child without me, but you might not find her in time. So I want the wood, and you want the child. It's a trade, a simple, clear-cut trade. Why does he want that wood so bad? He looked around at the three shocked faces as if he were seeing nothing but calm agreement, and they smiled delightedly and rubbed their hands together. Done and done, he said. I knew right away, I said to myself, now here's a group of intelligent, reasonable people. I'm seldom wrong. As a judge of character, very seldom disappointed. So all that remains is to write it up on paper, giving me the wood, and to sign it. It's best, don't you agree, to keep things legal and tidy? The rest is easy, nothing to it. You go for your local constable, and he and I, it's like the sheriff, and he and I will ride out and bring the child and the criminals. Oh, no, Mr. Foster, I understand your concern, but you mustn't come along. We'll do this business my way. Now there, your terrible ordeal is as good as over, isn't it? I'm so thankful I was here to help you out. Chapter 16. The constable was fat and he was sleepy. He wheezed when he spoke, and he spoke quite a bit as they started off, and he and the man in the yellow suit. First, they roused me out of bed in the middle of the night after I'd been out since sunup looking for that child, and now, well, I suppose you're going to try to run me all the way, he said sourly. I've got to tell you, this horse of mine is none too strong. I don't have to hurry her as a rule, so most of the time it don't matter. Seems to me we could have waited till dawn anyway. The man in the yellow suit was as courteous as always. The Fosters have been waiting since yesterday morning, he pointed out. Naturally, they're very upset. The sooner we get there, the sooner that child will be with them again. How come you're so deep in it? Asked the constable suspiciously. Maybe you're in cahoots with the kidnappers. How do I know? You should have reported it right off when you saw her get snatched. The man in the yellow suit sighed. But of course I had to find out where they were taking her, he explained patiently. I came right back after that, and the Fosters are friends of mine. They've sold me their wood. The constable's eyes went round. Well, I'll be, he said. What do you know about that? I didn't suppose they'd ever do a thing like that, friend or no friend. They're the first family around here, you know, proud as peacocks, all of them. Family proud and land proud, too. But they sold off, did they? Well, well. And he whistled in amazement. They thumped along in silence for a while, out around the wood and across the starlit meadow. And then the constable yawned deeply and said, You ready to tell me how long this is going to take? How far we got to go? 20 miles north, said the man in the yellow suit. The constable groaned. 20 miles? He shifted the shotgun that rested across his saddle and groaned again. Clear up in the foothills? Well, that's a fair way, all right. There was no reply to this. The constable ran his fingers down the gleaming barrel of the shotgun, and then he surged and slumped a little in the saddle. Might as well relax, he wheezed, suddenly companionable. We'll be riding 3 or 4 hours. There was no reply. Yes, sir, said the constable, trying again. It's never something for these new parts, kidnapping. Never had a case like this before that I know of, and I've been in charge of going on 15 years. He waited. You don't say so, his companion said at last. Yep, that's a fact, said the constable with evident relief. Maybe now there would be some conversation. Yep, 15 years. Seen a lot of trouble in 15 years, but nothing quite like this. Of course, there's a first time for everything, as they say. We got a brand new jailhouse, did you notice? Listen, it's a dandy. Give those folks nice, clean accommodations. He chuckled. Of course, they won't be there long. Circuit judge will be coming through next week. He'll send them over to Charlieville and most likely to the county jail. That's what they do for your serious crimes. Of course, we got a gallows of your own if we need it. Keeps the trouble down, but I think just having it there ain't ever used it yet. That's because they take care of the serious stuff over in Charlieville, like they say. A gallows is where they hang you. The constable paused to light a cigar and went on cheerfully. What you got planned for that piece of foster land? You going to clear it? Put up a house or maybe a store? No, said the man in the yellow suit. The constable waited for more, but there was no more. His sour mood returned. He frowned and shook the ashes from his cigar. Say, he said, you're kind of a close-lipped feller, ain't you? The man in the yellow suit narrowed his eyes. His mouth and above the thin gray beard twitched with annoyance. Look here, he said tightly. Would you mind if I rode on ahead? I'm worried about that child. I'll tell you how to get there, and I'll go on ahead and keep watch. Well, said the constable grudgingly, all right if you're in such a ding-danged hurry, but don't do nothing till I get there. Those folks are likely dangerous. I'll try to keep up, but if this horse of mine, well, she's none too strong. Don't see how I could get her to gallop even if I tried. That's right, said the man in the yellow suit, so I'll go ahead and wait outside the house until you get there. He explained the route carefully and then dug his heels into the flanks of the fat old horse, cantering off into the darkness where just a hint of dawn glowed on the edges of the hills far ahead. The constable chewed on the end of his cigar. He said to his horse, Did you get a gander at that suit of clothes? Oh, well, takes all kinds, as they say. And he followed slowly after the yawning, the gap between him and the man ahead lengthening every mile. What's going to happen when they get there? I guess we'll have to wait and see. That was a good part. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll try again, maybe tomorrow. Adios, my friends.